Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us to another conversation with a leader from the industry about shaping the early years. The Early Advantage is a platform where we talk to people from different walks and different industries and understanding how they have reached the have how they have navigated the career ladder and reached the status where they are today. So, with that, today I'm glad to welcome Ridhima, who has been in the leadership roles in different fintech organizations and has begun her journey not as a finance professional but as a product engineer. So she was with Infosys building banking software. Then she moved to, after her MBA, moved to Yes Bank as a corporate banker. It is this foundational shift from the world of logic and code, she moved to the art of the deal, and that has shaped her career. Today, we are going to decode those unwritten rules which she has learned in those critical 5 years or few years of her career. Ridhima, thank you so much for joining us on the Early Advantage.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you. So, as I said, you started your career as an engineer at Infosys, where it was all about coding and the software world. And after MBA, you got into Yes Bank. So, if you can recall those initial few months, few days, few weeks of being at Yes Bank, what was that? I would say an incorrect assumption which got broken once you joined the corporate world, that real world movement, as we say.
So, coming from engineering, honestly, logic meant the world to me. I genuinely believed that if something is logically sound, it should get approved. In software, if your code works, it works. It's simple. But in the world of banking or business, I realized that decisions aren't just about logic. They are about alignment, they're about risk appetite, and they're about perspectives. I remember working on an early credit proposal where on paper everything looked strong. But the deal, it just kept getting pushed back in internal discussions.
Mhm.
And then a senior looked at me and asked, "But do you trust the promoter's character when the monsoon fails?" And then it hit me. A tech code either compiles or it doesn't. But in banking or in business, the code is essentially human behavior, and which is infinitely more volatile. And then I thought that I was not looking at the complete answer, but just at a small lens of it. I learned that real world decisions, they happen at the intersection of logic, risk, and people. And unless you align all three of them, even the best ideas won't move forward.
True that, Ridhima. And you talked about alignment, you talked about people, you talked about risk, and you talked about perspectives. This reminds me of a very important aspect which we tend to say that is a necessary evil, but kind of exist, is the political lessons which we learn in our careers. And sometimes it's not about making it as sinful it seems, it's more about understanding the world, how it operates. So, can you recall any of such incidents where you realized that this is how things move, or so-called political lesson in the early career?
Yeah, you picked on it correctly, Pallavi. So, so for me, the lesson is essentially like if I were to say in one line, you need to de-risk the room before you enter it.
Hmm.
And what I mean is you have to preempt the no's. So early on, I used to think that if I build a strong case, the committee would approve it. Like there's no reason not to. But then I quickly realized that by the time you walk into the room, the opinions are made, the decisions are almost already shaped.
Hmm.
So you're never to walk into a meeting to find out what people actually think. You're supposed to walk into the meeting already knowing their fears and having the antidote already written into some page in your proposal. The real work, it is essentially happening in pre-alignment, in understanding the concerns from be it risk, legal, or credit teams beforehand. Like you said, I learned that politics, in a very healthy sense, is
Hmm.
really about anticipating perspectives and reducing the uncertainty for others. A good deal or a proposal or a decision till date, like I said, it doesn't get approved in the meeting, it's approved before the meeting. And that lesson has stayed with me even till now, and especially in all the roles that I've done with cross functional leadership. Alignment is not a formality, it's actually the quintessential work which is out there.
Very rightly said, Ridhima. And I think to your point, all these things are never taught in any of the classrooms we have been. It's more about the EI, the emotional intelligence, which you develop. And one of the very important facet of developing that EI is the kind of managers or the leaders you meet in the beginning of your career. So I would definitely ask you that what about your initial leaders with whom you worked? And can you think of any piece of advice they would have given to you or forced you with that this is how the work should be, that you might not have appreciated at that time, but later would have realized that it was a brilliant lesson in the risk or the client management aspects which you were managing?
Yeah. Okay. So I had a very intense and a passionate manager. And he was obsessive about documentation and precision.
Mhm.
Every number, every clause, every assumption had to be airtight. And honestly, at that time, it felt very excessive. But in hindsight, I must admit that it was one of the most valuable lessons I got.
Hmm.
Because in banking, and honestly, in any high stakes environment you are in, it is the small gaps which become big risks. The devil is always in the details. And what I learned from that was discipline, thinking through second order effects, being precise in communication and especially written communication, and owning the details fully. Today, even when I'm working on any large partnership or any product strategy, that foundation of rigor still shapes how I operate.
That's a great skill to learn and develop in the beginning of your career. And as you said, I think personally speaking too, I've realized like documentation or reading between the lines plus reading the lines, they play a huge role. And in the world of chat GPT and AI, sometimes we think that because someone else is writing your script, you don't need to read it. The logic still or the reasoning still applies there. You have to be thorough with what you are presenting, and especially as you rightly said, in the high stake environment. So I think you were lucky to find such a leader who enforced this kind of attribute in your in the beginning of your career.
Yeah, but like I said, you only connect the dots in hindsight. So yes, today I'm like really grateful, and it's these small micro actions, that essentially like shape up who you become. And so my thing here has always been that you have to take on any activity, any chapter as a learning. There's always something that you learn out of an activity, that no experience goes waste, even if at that point in time it looks like a bad one, it will still end up teaching you something.
Absolutely. I think that's where the whole um concept of learner mindset is in action, as you said. So, you have been in the banking world or you have been in the finance world for a while, and that is, as you rightly said, a very high stake world. And it means you were responsible for deals, you were responsible for execution around them. So, maybe there would have been some challenges which you would have faced. If you can recall any of those, any epic professional mistake which was there, the stomach drop moment you had in the beginning of your career, and how did you manage it?
Oh yeah, I think there would be. I think yeah. So one of my early mistakes was underestimating how fragile deals and proposals can be. Uh, it's hard for me to talk about anything very specifically, but I'm just trying to sum up the experience at this point in time. I remember that I'd worked on a deal that looked very strong, very promising, uh, and I was so excited by it, and somehow I hadn't fully stress tested certain assumptions, maybe by the glamour of it, or because it was a high profile and it was just very promising by the looks of it. And naturally, it fell apart later in the process. And that was a very, very tough moment for me. Ownership is a value that I abide by, and somehow that I did not do certain parts there. Like it did not. I was not able to absorb it very well. And the real lesson for me there, essentially, Pallavi, was that ownership is not generally of the analysis, but of the entire life cycle of a decision.
True.
And I learned to ask then as to what am I missing? What could go wrong? What is not being said? I started thinking forward. I started to anticipate potential roadblocks. I started thinking end to end. And that mindset shift from completing a task, from owning a task to owning an outcome is what that has stayed with me throughout my career.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it very aptly when you said owning a task to owning the outcome, and that's a huge shift, especially someone joining after campus. We think that, okay, I've done this 10 things in the checklist and my job is over. It's not about the holistic picture, which we have to learn, and learning early in your career makes a huge impact. So absolutely, I think that ownership is about making sure that you see the last mile as well. So,
Yeah.
you were there in your initial career time frame. I'm sure you would have met not only the MBA graduates, but also people from other aspects of professional world, like CAs and legal world, plus technology people. So, how did you manage? What was the moment when you felt that sense of belongingness working with people from different walks of life?
Mm, Actually, interestingly, my engineering background became quite an advantage, I must say.
Okay.
Uh, so, I'm an electrical engineer by virtue of my graduate studies. Uh, and when I joined banking, I was actually tasked upon funding infrastructure projects, huge power plants, renewable, non renewable, thermal, and all those. And it actually felt like homecoming to me. I could quickly understand like all the technical details, the operational details of the projects that we were funding. And then putting a model to it became very easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
And also then putting my software engineering hat from Infosys days, I remember I was able to break the complex models into structured frameworks, almost like I was debugging a system.
Mm.
So when others like around my peers, they were approaching at deals from purely like a financial lens, I could connect the operational, the product, the technical, and the financial pieces together.
Mm.
And I was also able to kind of help my coworkers visualize some of those things, because at that point in time they were largely looking at it only from a financial lens, and but wouldn't still understand why they were assuming like a particular thing out there and all. And some of these things, like we all started to coexist together and started helping each other. And at that moment, what I realized was I wasn't at a disadvantage, or I wasn't like, because I came from a different background. It was just that I had a very different lens.
Yeah.
And and from then, I think I became a very strong believer of the fact that your edge is not in your background. It's essentially how you leverage your background.
Yeah.
And over time, for me personally, I think that multi lens thinking became one of my core strengths. And the fact that as a tribe of people, we all like kind of grew together, I think that in itself built, like I must say, very strong trusted bonds, like to begin with, on the days when we were all growing together.
Mm. Yeah, I think very rightly said about building the bonds and leveraging your background to make it a strength. So, thank you for sharing that. I think I can also relate to it, how it matters and how you orient yourself in the work environment, and of course, learn from people around you. So, moving forward, if I may ask, another tough situations which we face, and you have been quite an achiever in your academics as well. but it was a different corporate world. So what was the first no you heard? First deal might have been rejected, and it would have made you think or maybe rethink your approach as well. So any of such incidents which come to your mind?
Yeah, I know there was again one of the very high profile deals that I was working on, and I was very invested into that, and it got rejected. I
Mm-hmm.
had spent like I spent like a lot of midnight oil on that, but it got rejected. I created like a very detailed proposal and sort of things. At that time, it was a very big setback for me. But in hindsight, I must say that it forced me to rethink how I was structuring the problem.
Hmm.
So when I say I created like a proposal and sort of things, I was optimizing on how to get it approved. I was optimizing for approval, but not for the long term viability of the proposal and the overall risk alignment. And that no actually pushed me to become more thoughtful and less transactional in my approach.
Yeah.
I realized that most people solve problems, and that's what I was doing. But very few people define the right problem, structure the problem correctly. And honestly, that shift has had a much bigger impact on my career than the deals which actually went through.
Hmm.
I must say that some of the best growth actually comes from the rejections which you don't expect.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true because the lot of reflection happens only when things don't work
Exactly.
in favor as such, and successes are followed by more of fun and parties at least at that age and time.
Absolutely. I think I'm a very, very strong believer of the fact that uh, you should cross a bed of thorns sooner than you cross a bed of roses, because that essentially helps you, that shapes you, that defines your perspective,
Hmm.
and that makes you way, way more resilient and appreciate the beauty of the world way more.
Yeah, nicely put, Ridhima. Moving forward, few of the things it's more of a quick response which comes to your mind, the first response which comes to your mind when I ask these things. So to begin with, tell me the most overrated skill which you realized doesn't matter in the corporate world, and the underrated skill as well.
Uh, nice. So, overrated for me was the idea of technical correctness, analytical skills, I must say, to drive outcomes.
Okay.
I always used to believe that if you can model well, understand numbers, that will be enough. But trust me, you don't need a PhD in math or finance to be a great banker. You need to understand the why behind the numbers, which takes me to the underrated part, which is like stakeholder alignment and judgment. Understanding context, understanding trade offs, and stakeholder perspective, the ability to understand what matters to different people, bringing people along, building consensus. That's actually what drives impact and outcomes.
Yeah.
It's not an objective world. Subjectivity has a very important place here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the hard part of this so-called soft skill of getting
Yes.
together, right? And what about a boring superpower which you developed or you had and really helped you in your early years?
The ultimate boring skill that I must say that paid the highest dividends was attention to detail and writing clear, structured notes. My team hates it today when I ask them to do. But trust me, whether it was writing a credit note back then or a strategy doc today or presenting a proposal, I learned to simplify complexity into something others can understand and act on.
Hmm.
It's actually this art of synthesizing 200 pages of due diligence into 5 pages of actionable insight. It sounds very basic, but trust me, that ability it compounds massively over time, and
Hmm.
it is what builds trust, it accelerates decision, and it reduces friction. In today's world, I must say, of TLDR, short reels, and short films, it is the person who can simplify complexity while maintaining 100% accuracy who will be the most indispensable.
Yeah. There is a famous quote which says, "Brevity is an art." It will take
Yes.
someone to write. I don't remember the author, but he said that it will take me 15 minutes to write 10 pages and 2 days to write 2 lines. So, very much reminded me of what you just said. Okay, we talked about working with people across and different spheres as well. So, what about the relationships at work, or the other twin cousin of politics is called to be networking, which people try to shy away from? What about you? How did you navigate that stream?
Trust. So, trust compounds faster than skill. I
Hmm.
strongly believe in that. One habit which I built very early on was staying close to people who did the actual work, the analysts, the junior teams, my peers, the internal stakeholders. I always made it a point to understand their constraints and follow through very consistently. So instead of only focusing upwards, which a lot of people end up doing, I have always intentionally invested in building trust laterally. I always focus on being reliable and thoughtful in smallest of interactions. Be it good days, be it bad days, it all comes up together. And these relationships, they made collaboration so much smoother and gave me much better insight into how decisions were actually made, how work is actually done.
Hmm.
I strongly believe that trust, it doesn't come in big gestures. It comes in small repeated signals of credibility.
Hmm.
And on this I must say that I kind of cultivated some of the most meaningful, I would say, relationships of my life. Some of those folks are my best friends even till date. It's been about 15-20 years, and these are the people also who get me going.
That's I think a badge of honor in my view, to have those relationships built, because people have this assumption about the corporate world that nobody is a friend. It's all a competitive world. Everyone is ambitious, and you're talking about building those bonds which have lasted for last 15-20 years, and I hope continue forever. So great
No,
share.
no, 100%. And trust me, and especially in those early days, I must say you make the best of friends then, because everyone is going through the same challenges and misery unites. It is the strongest binding factor. So you will always make the best of friends. So
Yeah.
like your college friends, you say college is like formative years of your life. I would say early professional days are also the formative years of your professional life. So you do end up making good bonds.
Yeah, I can totally relate to you. I have also such set of friends who have survived those years, and that survivors bond continues. So yeah,
Exactly.
cool. So and it has been so many years. What about things which you stopped doing after maybe initial 1 or 2 years? You realize that this is not the way of getting things done, or any habit which you believed was, you had said thank you
Yes.
much, I don't want to anymore types.
Yes, there's one thing which I do. So honestly, I had to change my wiring and stop looking for a single right answer to be right. I
Hmm.
think that's something which is there. So in engineering, problems are deterministic.
Hmm.
If X, then Y, else Z, right? So it's all very binary. However, in business, problems are contextual. There are trade offs, there are shades of gray, there are multiple possible answers with different types of trade offs. And then learning to be comfortable with ambiguity and making decisions behind despite it, that was a very big shift and something that I leverage every single day in my career, and also what makes me good at my job today.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, and I think that pivot is required because, and you mentioned multiple times, it's about moving from that hardcore objectiveness to understanding the subjectivity of the world around. So yeah.
Yeah.
What about self-care habit, which maybe helped you sail those initial years? What was that?
So what has always helped me right from early on in my career, even till date? is
Mm-hmm.
creating those small routines that bring consistency, creating pockets of mental reset. So, whether it's like a walk, doing puzzles, Legos, drawing, taking time to reflect at the end of the day,
Mm.
or just stepping back from constant input to think through decisions calmly. These moments of pause actually help me process better, think better, and stay grounded.
Mm. And any particular literature or book or I would say personality which has helped you build or shape your thought process in so many years? Anyone would you like to share?
Uh, Early on, I did not used to follow like a lot of these personalities. I'll be honest. So I was only, I would say, driven or attracted by the ambition of Steve Jobs. That was early on. But lately, uh, two two books that I read and that kind of have stuck with me. One was Atomic Habits by Adam Grant, and the other was Give and Take by that's also by Adam Grant. Yes,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's a great
yes,
author. I totally reckon that.
yes,
Thank
yes.
you so much, Ridhima, for sharing your journey. And I really recognize the way you shared about the fact that how you build and leverage the background you come from, the electrical engineering world of being deterministic and logic bound, to understanding how the real world works, especially in the banking sector or the finance sector, which is driven not only by the numbers, but also with the kind of people or the stakeholders, as we say, or the shareholders as well, which you work with, and how you always pivoted whenever it was required. I think that's a great way of looking at things and being holistic and having that learner mindset to keep on building from what not went so well. I believe that's how we evolve as individuals as well as professionals. So, thank you so much for sharing your journey. And is it okay if someone wants to reach out to you over LinkedIn and seek?
Sure, 100%, 100%. I'm happy to help in whatever way I can.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here, Pallavi.
Thank you.
Thank you.